You are standing in a field outside Rome in the year 100 AD. You are 17 years old. You have never held a sword. You do not speak Latin particularly well. You come from a farming family in what is now northern Spain, one of millions of people living inside an empire so vast it would take 4 months to walk across, and you are about to become a Roman soldier. Not because you want glory, not because you believe in Rome, because the pay is 16 gold coins a year, more than your father earns in 3 years of farming, and the army will feed you, house you, and give you Roman citizenship when you are done, if you survive. Survival rate to retirement, 1 in 2. This is not a video about Roman battles. This is not about Caesar or Augustus or the great generals whose names you already know. This is about what it actually felt like to move through the Roman military machine, rank by rank, year by year, from the day you signed up to the day. 25 years later, if you were lucky, when you walked out with your land grant and your citizenship papers and your body that had been rebuilt by the most disciplined military institution in the ancient world. 7 ranks, 7 lives, 1 army. Let's start at the bottom. Rank 1 of 7, Tiro. The recruit your life as a Tiro lasts 4 months. 4 months of the most systematic physical transformation a human body could undergo in the ancient world. You wake before dawn. You march 20 Roman miles, about 30 kilometers, in 5 hours, carrying a pack weighing 45 pounds. You do this 3 times a week. On the other days you drill. Sword work against a wooden post twice your height. Shield technique. Formation movements so precise that 2,000 men can pivot in unison without a single spoken command. You are not taught to fight bravely. You are taught to fight efficiently. The Roman military had spent 500 years learning that individual heroism loses battles. Formation discipline wins them. Your job is not to be a warrior. Your job is to be a component in a machine. At the end of 4 months, you are tested. March speed, load weight, formation drill, weapons handling. If you pass, you are officially a Roman soldier. If you fail, you are sent home. 30% of recruits fail. You pass. But here is what nobody tells you before you sign up. The hardest part of being a Tiro is not the training. It is the oath, the sacramentum. Every Roman soldier swore it personally. Not to Rome, not to the Senate, but to the commanding officer by name. To obey his orders completely. To stay with the unit. To die in formation rather than break and run. Breaking the sacramentum was not punishable by law. It was punishable by your own unit. Decimation, the practice of executing 1 soldier in 10 chosen by lot when a unit showed cowardice, was rare but real. Every soldier knew it existed. You had just sworn an oath that could get you killed by your own comrades for cowardice. Welcome to the Roman army. Here is something that still surprises me about the Roman military. Soldiers were fined for losing their equipment. Lose your sword, fine. Lose your shield, fine. Lose your horse if you were cavalry. Potentially career-ending fine. The Roman army treated military equipment as the soldier's personal financial responsibility. Does this seem insane to you? Or does it actually make sense as a discipline system? Tell me below. Rank 2 of 7, Miles Gregarious. The common soldier, you will spend most of your career here. If you are average, and most soldiers are, you will retire as a Miles Gregarious, the common soldier. The backbone of every Roman legion, the man who built the roads, held the line, and mostly did not get a biography written about him. Your daily life in garrison is not what the films show you. You wake at dawn. You clean your equipment every morning without exception. Rust on your sword costs you money. Dents in your armor that you did not report cost you money. The Roman army ran on paperwork, fines, and meticulous record keeping, in a way that would feel familiar to anyone who has worked in a large modern organization. You eat well, better than almost anyone outside the army. The Roman military ration, wheat, olive oil, vinegar, salt, and occasional meat, was scientifically calibrated before the word science existed to maintain the body weight of a soldier carrying 45 pounds. You will never go hungry. You are also, almost certainly, building something. 80% of your service time in a stable empire is not combat. It is construction, roads, forts, aqueducts, bridges. The Roman army was the largest engineering corps in the ancient world, and every soldier was also a laborer. You know how to dig a regulation ditch. You know the dimensions of a standard marching camp, the same layout, every time, every location, so that if you arrive at night in hostile territory, you know exactly where everything is without being able to see it. You share a room with 7 other men, 8 soldiers per tent, 8 soldiers per room in a permanent barracks. This is your unit, the contubernium. These 8 men are the most important people in your life. You eat with them, sleep next to them, fight beside them, and if one of them dies, you carry his body. You also share, informally, a savings account, because the Roman army deducted from your pay for equipment, food, and the burial fund. Every soldier contributed to a collective burial fund, so no soldier died without a proper funeral, and whatever was left went into a savings account held by the unit's standard bearer, the signifer, which you could not touch without his permission. The Roman army owned your money, your equipment, your time, your body. In return, it gave you the most stable and well-fed existence available to a man of your social class in the ancient world. 80% of your service was construction, not combat. Rank 3 of 7, Immunis, the specialist. This is the rank most people skip over, and it is the one that actually makes life bearable. An immunis is a soldier who has been assigned a specialist duty that exempts them from the standard fatigues every other miles has to do. Digging, latrine cleaning, guard rotation at unpopular posts, the endless grinding manual labor of garrison life. The list of immunis specializations reads like the staffing directory of a small city: medical orderly, artillery operator, carpenter, blacksmith, surveyor, drill instructor, clerk, courier, priest's assistant, standard bearer's assistant, cavalry trainer, swimming instructor. Yes, swimming instructor. The Roman army taught its soldiers to swim. Getting immunis status required either a skill the army valued or the ability to impress an officer. Both paths required something the Roman army rewarded above almost everything else: literacy. A soldier who could read and write was worth 3 soldiers who could not. The Roman military ran on documents, supply requisitions, troop rosters, duty assignments, official complaints, land survey records. The Vindolanda tablets, discovered near Hadrian's Wall in northern England, give us a window into what Roman military paperwork actually looked like. Requests for more beer, complaints about the local roads, a birthday party invitation from one officer's wife to another. The Roman army was also in its way human. If you were lucky enough to become an immunis, your quality of life improved dramatically. You still fought when fighting was required. Immunis was a duty assignment, not a combat exemption. But in the long stretches between campaigns, you were the man in the warm room doing the inventory, not the man in the rain digging the ditch. Rank 4 of 7, Principales. The NCO. This is where the Roman military system becomes genuinely sophisticated. The principals were the non-commissioned officers of the Roman army, the equivalent of modern sergeants and staff sergeants. They had more pay, more authority, and more responsibility than the common soldier. They were also the real managers of the Roman legion. Your optio was your direct supervisor, the second in command of your century, the officer who stood behind the formation during battle, with a long staff to push back anyone who looked like they might break and run. Your tesserarius was the password officer, the man who distributed the day's watchword, the person responsible for the night guards reporting in correctly. Your aquilifer carried the eagle standard of the legion. This was not a ceremonial role. Losing the eagle standard was the single greatest disgrace a Roman legion could suffer. Eagles were sometimes lost, most famously in the Teutoburg forest in 9 AD, when 3 entire legions were wiped out and their eagles captured by Germanic tribes. The Romans spent 50 years trying to get those eagles back. The aquilifer was expected to die before he let the eagle fall. What made the principal system work was that it created a middle tier of experienced soldiers who had genuine investment in the system. They were paid more, sometimes double the base salary. They had real authority over the men below them. They were the institutional memory of the unit, the men who knew where the supply depot was, which local merchants could be trusted, how the commander liked his morning report formatted. Every functional organization in history has needed this layer. The Roman army invented it 2,000 years ago, and it has never been improved upon. Rank 5 of 7, Centurion. This is the rank that actually ran the Roman army. The centurion commanded 80 men, not 100. The name is a historical quirk from an earlier organizational system. 80 men, called a century, was the operational unit of the Roman military, and the centurion was its absolute authority. Most centurions came from the ranks, experienced soldiers who had demonstrated leadership, literacy, and the kind of physical and psychological toughness that could impose discipline on 80 battle-hardened men. Some were appointed directly by officers for political reasons. The good ones, the ones the legions remembered, almost always came from the ranks. The centurion was identified by his transverse helmet crest, running side to side across his helmet rather than front to back, so his men could see him in the chaos of battle. He carried a vine staff not as a weapon, but as an instrument of punishment. A centurion had the legal right to strike any soldier under his command with the vine staff for any infraction. This was not theoretical, it was routine. One of the most revealing documents from Roman military history is a complaint recorded in a soldier's letter, found at Vindolanda, about a centurion who beat men as if they were slaves. The letter suggests this was considered excessive even by Roman standards. The centurion's most important quality was not tactical brilliance. It was the ability to keep 80 men alive, fed, disciplined, and willing to walk into the thing that every rational human being wants to walk away from: a shield wall with blades behind it. The mortality rate for centurions in battle was significantly higher than for common soldiers. They led from the front. This was not optional. A centurion who did not lead from the front was not a centurion for long. Rank 6 of 7, tribunus. The officer here is where the Roman military system reveals its most interesting contradiction. The tribuni militum were the staff officers of a Roman legion, 6 per legion, responsible for administrative and command functions. They were almost invariably from the equestrian class, the wealthy second tier of Roman society. Men who had never been common soldiers, who had not worked their way up from the ranks. In other words, the men in charge of the military institution that every other man on this list had spent years earning their way through were, in many cases, aristocratic administrators who had bought or inherited their positions. This bothered the professional soldiers enormously. The Vindolanda tablets contain references, oblique but legible between the lines, to career soldiers' frustration with tribune-class officers who did not know how to read a terrain map or estimate a march time. And yet, the Roman army worked. It worked for 500 years as a professional fighting force, which means the Roman military had found a way to make this class friction functional, not fatal. The answer was the centurions. The tribuni decided what to do. The centurions decided how to do it. The professional soldiers knew that the centurion was the real authority on the ground. The tribuni, the smart ones, knew it too. A tribune who understood that his centurions had 40 years of combined experience and treated them accordingly was a tribune whose unit survived. A tribune who did not understand this did not last long, either in battle or in the esteem of his men. Every organization that has lasted longer than a generation has solved this exact problem the same way. The people at the top set direction. The people in the middle who actually know how things work determine whether it happens. 2,000 years later, this has not changed. Rank 7 of 7, Legatus Legionis. The general one man commanded the entire legion, 10,000 soldiers, the most powerful military force in the ancient world per unit. The Legatus Legionis was a senator, a man of the highest social class, appointed directly by the emperor, commanding a force that could conquer a province, defend a border, or, if the politics of the empire shifted badly, march on Rome itself. This was not hypothetical. Several legate-commanded legions did march on Rome. The year of the 4 emperors, 69 AD, was a civil war fought almost entirely by legions, whose generals decided the emperor was not legitimate and they knew someone better. The legatus had everything: wealth, power, command of 10,000 trained killers, a staff of tribunes and senior centurions who knew how to execute his orders. He also had one job that never went away: keeping his legion loyal. Roman legions had personalities. The Third Gallica was known for a specific Eastern religious practice its soldiers had adopted during service in Syria. The 6th Victrix, stationed in Britain for most of the empire's duration, became so embedded in British culture that the city of York grew up around its fortress. A legatus who understood his legion's identity, who treated its traditions and its history as real things, not obstacles, commanded men who would follow him into situations where rational self-interest said to stop and run. A legatus who treated the legion as a resource to be managed efficiently, without understanding that it was also a community with its own culture and memory. That legatus had problems that no amount of tactical brilliance could solve. The legatus who actually appears in the history books, the one whose name you might still recognize, was usually not the most tactically brilliant man in the legion. He was the man who understood his institution. This was true in 100 AD. It is still true now. We started with a 17-year-old standing in a field outside Rome. 25 years later, if he survived 2 campaigns in Germania, 1 outbreak of disease in a winter garrison, the chronic joint damage of carrying 45 pounds for 2 decades, and the political uncertainty of serving under 5 different emperors, he walked out with a land grant, a Roman citizenship certificate, and a body that had been rebuilt twice over by the most systematic military institution in the ancient world. He was 42 years old. He was probably the fittest, most disciplined, most organizationally sophisticated person in whatever village he retired to. He was also half-deaf from too many hours near artillery, and his left knee had not worked properly since a skirmish outside the Rhine frontier in the winter of year 12. That is what 7 ranks of the Roman military actually produced. Not glory, not conquest, not the marble statues and triumphal arches. A 42-year-old man with a land grant and a bad knee, sitting in a village in Spain, trying to explain to his grandchildren what the Rhine looked like at dawn. If this made you think about something, about institutions, about what it takes to build something that lasts 500 years, about what gets passed down and what gets lost, leave it in the comments. The best conversations on this channel happen there. Subscribe to Arcana Historia. Next week, what it was like to be on the other side. The people the Roman legions were marching toward and how some of them survived.